Let's take a look at some position and velocity graphs and do some practice. Just generally graphing, no numbers here, just the shapes. Whee! Zoom around. Alright, so this is going to be some review, and you can feel free to skip ahead or turn the video to play twice speed or whatever you need to do to keep yourself entertained. So if we're talking about position and velocity graphs, let's start just with constant velocity. So this means no acceleration, and that'll just make these things easier. And a few pages down here, we'll get to acceleration. There's some acceleration ones, but let's just start out with constant velocity. The car's back up here for fun. So there's three real basic things that can happen on a position graph. I'm going to draw the position graph and then the velocity graph. So on a position graph, you can just have something really easy like that. You could have something like that, or you could have something like that. Those are the three real basic things you can do on a position graph. This one means that as time is going on, your position is not changing. This one means that as time is going on, your position is getting more and more positive or further away from your origin. And this means as time is going on, you're getting closer and closer to your origin, or your position is getting closer to the origin. As far as matching this to a velocity graph, this is pretty easy. This is signifying that I'm not going anywhere, so that means my velocity is 0. So down here, that would just be something like that. This is signifying a positive constant velocity, so that would be somewhere up here like that. And this is a constant negative velocity, somewhere down there like that. And we can get things slightly more complicated if, say, for example, I had a graph that looked like this instead. Can you tell that that's a different color? Probably not. Let's see if I can find a different color. How about this one? That's better. So how is that going to show up down here? Well, it's still a positive constant velocity. It's just a greater magnitude. It's going faster. So that's going to show up somewhere up here. Same over here. If I had something like that, that would be a greater magnitude. So it's going to be somewhere down here like that. And right now, I'm not really being very picky about the exact numbers here. It's just the general idea. So I've got positive velocities up here, and I've got negative velocities down here. There are a lot of people who had trouble going the opposite direction, going from a velocity graph to a position graph. So let's check out some of those. And once again, there's really only a couple things that can happen. I can have 0 velocity like that. I could perhaps have some sort of positive velocity like that. Or I could have some sort of negative velocity like that. How are those going to be down here? 0 velocity means I'm not going anywhere, so my position is going to stay the same. I don't know where to start on the x-axis because this doesn't tell me where to start. So that means I can start anywhere I want to on this axis. So how about there? Great. That means I'm not going anywhere. 0 velocity. This means I have a positive velocity. Once again, I can start anywhere along this axis that I want. But let's say I start right there. That's a positive velocity. And this is a negative velocity. I can start anywhere I want. Let's say I want to start right there and I want to go like that. Oops, I went over that axis. No problem. That just goes into negative positions. Right? No big deal. You can have a negative position. That's fine. You just went behind where you started out. Right? And then once again, I can do things like change what the velocity is. If this is a bigger number here, then that's going to be a more positive number here. If that's a more negative velocity, it's going to be a more negative velocity like that. Right? So here comes some practice problems for you. I'm going to just put this up here. And if you want to do practice on your own, then you should pause the video. Pause, pause, pause. This would be a good time to pause. Pause. Why is the pause button like this? I don't know. And the play button is like that. I guess that makes sense because it goes forward, but I don't know why the pause button looks like that. But you should hit it on the video so you can practice these, right? Good? You ready? Coming back? Okay, so here we go. Here's the answers. That is a positive speed, and that is 0 speed. So on my velocity graph, I want to have a positive and then go down to 0, just like that. Here's a positive speed that's pretty big, a negative speed that's pretty big, and then there's a positive speed that's pretty small. Positive speed, negative speed, positive speed, just like that. Here is a negative speed that's kind of medium, 0, a slow positive speed, and a really big negative speed. So a negative speed, start out negative speed, and then 0, and then kind of a small positive speed, and then a really big negative speed, so I gotta go way down there. So that is relative to that. This part is steeper there, and that part is less steep. There we go. Now here's the velocity graph. This was more challenging part on the last quiz for some of you. So here's how this goes. Positive velocity, pretty big, and then a smaller positive velocity, and then jumping to a negative velocity and an even bigger negative velocity. So these are kind of impossible situations, right? Like a regular car wouldn't really be able to do this. Just the changes in velocity are too abrupt. But anyways, we can say this is a positive velocity. It's pretty big, so that means I need a really steep slope. Then I need something that's still going positive, but that's less steep, like that. Now I need something that's going in the negative direction that's not very steep. I'll line this up over here. And then this section means I need something steep in the negative direction, like that. Right? So that should have been a little more straight. Here's the different sections. 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. Steep, less steep, going backwards, less steep, and then more steep. Over here I've got a big negative, followed by 0, and then a big positive, and then a smaller positive. So I want to start by going in the negative direction, and then 0 velocity looks like this. And a big positive velocity, and then a smaller positive velocity, just like that. This one means 0 velocity, and once again I don't know where to start on this x-axis, so I just got to pick a place. Right there looks good. Right? I can also try to plan in advance. If I look over here, I say, oh look, that's a negative velocity, that's pretty big, so I'm going to need some space to go down on this graph. Anyways, so this tells me I'm not moving anywhere. I have kind of a small positive velocity for that part, and then a really big negative velocity for that part. Something like that. Great. So those are constant velocity. You should practice them. They're very doable. They're very fun. Let's move on to acceleration. Good. So you should make sure you understand the constant velocity stuff before you move on to the acceleration. We always have constant acceleration. It just works for our equations and makes our velocity graphs have straight lines. If you have a curvy line on a velocity graph, it gets very tricky, right? The math gets sort of tricky on that. As far as acceleration goes, there's sort of 4 possible things that can happen on a position graph that match up to 4 possible things on the velocity graph down here. Let's do green. One thing I could have is something going like that. I could have something going like that. I could have something going like that, and I could have something that goes going like that. And we did these in class. Just to review, what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for the slope. So I want to see how does the slope change on my position graph as time is moving on. So we need something to line up the slope. How about a paper clip? Good. Meaning right here on the graph, the slope is actually not very much. And then as the graph goes on, the slope gets steeper and steeper and steeper and steeper and steeper and steeper and steeper. That means my velocity starts out at 0 and it gets more and more and more and more and more and more and more. Down here on the velocity graph, this corresponds to 0, going like that. Good, so those two match up. This one also starts out with 0 velocity, and as time goes on, the velocity gets more and more and more and more negative. Down like that. So that means I start out with 0 velocity, but I'm going in the negative direction, like that. Good. Here I start out with a positive velocity that's pretty big, and as time goes on, the velocity gets less and less and less and less and less. So I start out with a positive velocity, and then I go down to 0 like that. Here I start out with a negative velocity, and this takes me down to 0 like that. So here I start with a negative velocity, and it goes like that. Great. Now we also in class piece these two together to make what I call a smiley face and a frowny face. So if I make a smiley face like that, or a frowny face like that, then I'm just piecing a couple of these two together. For the smiley face, it's this part of the graph followed by this part of the graph. So as far as the velocity goes, I need to go that and then go like that. So we're going to go just like that. As far as the frowny face goes, it's going to be the opposite, just like that. Now I didn't line these up. This point in the middle should line up with that point right there. And that point in the middle should line up with that point right there. That's where it goes flat. So this is going in the negative direction, slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, stopping, speeding up, speeding up, speeding up, speeding up. In the negative direction, slow down, slow down, slow down, stop, speed up, speed up, speed up. Here I have slow down, slow down, slow down, stop, speed up, speed up, speed up, speed up. Right? It's tricky to remember those things, that this section right here is actually slowing down. And this is speeding up. even though the whole time I have this acceleration as a positive acceleration. This over here is slowing, and this is speeding over here. Slowing down, speeding up, even though the whole time I have this negative acceleration. What you should be able to do is go back and forth between these different shapes. Now notice how I didn't really make any adjustments to these position graphs to do anything different. So technically we could say make something that goes like that. Well, that was okay. Like a steeper parabola, which would bring us something like this on the velocity graphs. We're just not going to get into that so much. So don't worry about these. Just the basic shapes. We're not going to really get into graphing more acceleration or less acceleration on these position graphs. It just gets to be a little too arbitrary because it's hard to draw an exact parabola like that. Nonetheless, you could do it, and you can see how that's going to happen. Now, let's come to the point where, once again, you try. Here's some acceleration graphs where you get to try it out. So now is the time to once again hit that pause button. Pause it, and try it out on your own. Don't just wait for me to do it, really, hit pause. Pause, right there, bing, bing, bing. Good, now try these out on your own. Okay, coming back to me, great. Let's see how this goes. Now what I've done is I've put a little dot there to indicate something's changing. So what is happening here? I'm getting some acceleration here, and then I'm getting a constant speed as this goes on. I'm getting some acceleration here, and I'm getting a constant speed, and then I'm getting some more acceleration. Here I'm accelerating, constant speed, and then some more acceleration. Notice how I never say deceleration. It's always acceleration. So let's look at this part of this graph right here. This is slow, getting faster, 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 and then eventually my speed gets to be even. And so what's that going to look like down here? Well, I start with 0 speed. Right? Then I'm going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, and then eventually I reach the point where, hey, I'm going to get a constant speed like that. Tricky, right? This actually should line up with that right there. This is the point where I'm going from acceleration to constant speed. Acceleration, constant speed. Here's another tricky one. This I'm starting out with 0 speed, but I'm going in the negative direction, so my speed is increasing in the negative direction, and then I get a constant speed in the negative direction, and I'm decreasing my speed in the negative direction. So all this is going to happen below the axis down here. I'm going to start with 0 speed in the negative direction, and then I'm going to get, sorry, that should be a straight line. Then I'm going to get going a constant speed in the negative direction, and then I'm going to get going slower and slower. Right? These two dots line up with those two dots there. Good. Lastly, we have something here where I have a really big speed in the negative direction. I slow down, but I don't slow down all the way to stop. Go in constant velocity, and then I slow down all the way to stop. So I have a big speed in the negative direction. I slow down, go to a constant oops, sorry, that should be flat, and then slow down to stop like that. Right. Let's go on now, velocity graphs. Here's velocity, 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 going to position. So this tells me I'm having a big velocity that's going down to 0, and then I'm staying at 0 velocity. Right, so this is going to be positive velocity, getting less, 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 and then going down to 0 velocity. What's that going to mean down here? Let's switch over to green. I have, oh no, orange was good. We had orange in the other graph. So I have a big positive velocity, and I'm slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, and then I'm stopping like that. Right? This gets really tricky, and once again, this is not something that a regular car could do so much. But this is in the negative direction. I have a really big negative velocity, slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, stopped, and then still going back in the negative direction, speeding up, speeding up, speeding up, speeding up in the negative direction. So everything is going down this way in the negative direction. Right? That's what it means to go negative. So start out with a really big negative speed, slow down to 0 for just a sec, and then go back and speed up in the negative direction again. Ready? This is going to be a little bit tricky. So I have a really big negative speed. I slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, stop, and then I'm speeding up, speeding up, speeding up, speeding up in the negative direction. So there's my stopped point right there. There's my stopped point. This is similar, but in the opposite direction. So I have a really big positive velocity. I slow down, slow down, slow down, stop, and then speed up, speed up, speed up, speed up. Really big positive velocity. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, stop. Stop means going this way, horizontal, and then speed up, speed up, speed up, speed up. Just like that. Lines up there. All right, I hope you're able to do these. If not, look back over them. You can rewind, you can play it again, you can ask me questions, and you can play with fun little cars. Whee! All right.